If you're ready, I'm ready.
I'm ready.
Okay. Okay. Good afternoon. Welcome everyone on this beautiful December the 16th. I'm looking outside. It's not beautiful. It's dark and grey and rainy. Hello, Charlie.
Hi, Eva. How are you?
I'm good. How is Smudge? And how are you, of course?
Smudge is fine. He's found the Christmas tree, but the Christmas tree's still standing, so that's good. But yeah, I'm all right. I went for a run earlier and just got caked in mud. I'm just bored of the weather already.
Yes, I'm not so fond of the rain, but I went for a walk this morning and it was dry still, so I made sure to go for a walk while I could. And I see that the chat is already alive with people and questions, so that's great to see and great to hear. Wow, there's a lot going on, so that's great. This is going to be the last Viz review for 2020.
I know, yeah, better make it good.
Yeah, I know, no pressure. But because I'll be traveling next week, but also Christmas time, people should focus on other things, and I think the two of us can do with a bit of a break.
Yeah, it'd be quite nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and for those who are curious how Makeover Monday is going to look next year, Andy and I are doing a YouTube live tomorrow, same time, same place, so the channel you're already on at 4 p.m. UK time. So please do join us and we will reveal all and everything.
It's very
live tomorrow, same time, same place, so the channel you're already on at 4 p.m. UK time.
exciting. Lots going on.
Yes. Okay. Ooh, I have done something really weird. I made it all go into what is it called? Inception style Zoom view. But anyway, this week we're going to talk about the paintings of Bob Ross. I was so excited when I saw the data set. I get data sets into my inbox every week through Data is Plural. And when I saw Bob Ross, I'm like, oh my God, he is my hero. This is going to happen. And Andy helped me pull the data together from GitHub because I don't actually have an account there. And it seems that people do enjoy this data set because we've had a lot of engagement, right?
Yeah, I to be honest, I got no idea who the guy is. I had no idea. I don't know if it's just because I don't know how you know about him, because so he's an American guy and I guess he was on TV in the 80s or something.
Yes, so for me, because I was only born in the 80s, it was in the 90s that I don't know how we came across him, but I do remember when we went on holiday in Sweden. It was 94 and we had this little house by the lake and we spent 3 weeks there over summer and it was fantastic and it had a TV. And I grew up without TV, so for me that was quite the treat to be able to watch TV. And there were two shows we watched, my brother and I, and that was Bob Ross, and we're just like mesmerized. And the other show was this kids show, and I don't know what it's called. I did try to Google it, and I couldn't find it. So if anyone is from Sweden can help, let me know. And it was these two guys, or maybe a guy and a woman, probably a woman in there. Even this is Sweden after all. And they were trash collectors, and they had these T-shirts on, and I don't know what they were saying because it was all in Swedish, but they would always, I think maybe kids could call or maybe write a letter or something. This is the 90s, and you would get a T-shirt, and these were called Tippin T-shirts. I don't know why. I'm guessing maybe there's some relation to rubbish tip. I don't know. But I remember that summer watching a lot of Bob Ross, and yeah, he did feature on TV in Germany. And
right, we didn't have it at all when I was young, and I'm even older than Eva, who's very young. But I'm 42, and when I was young, there was 4 TV channels, and in the daytime there was just 1 hour of kids TV. It's why people of my generation are so productive and educated, I guess.
Yeah, well, so everyone knows Henry by now, Andy's youngest son, and he has a T-shirt that has Bob Ross's face in the middle, and it says happy little accidents or happy accidents or something. Because Bob Ross always said there are no mistakes, there are only happy little accidents. But if you have a chance, Charlie, watch him on YouTube. It's really fascinating.
All right, I will.
So I really like the article that this came in. So that's on 538. And the chart itself, the original, is not bad, right? They typically produce fairly good articles. But I was curious to see what the community could come up with. And so we have a collection on Twitter. We'll go top to bottom this time because I did do it in chronological order. And let's have a look what people created. I tried to come up with quite a bit of variety of visualization. So let's start with Pedro, who has created something in R.
So I think Pedro did something last week that I really liked, and this is in exactly the same category because it's not wildly different to the original, is it? It's but there's no need to be afraid of doing a bar chart if you do it well, and Pedro's done it well. So I don't know how you could make things much clearer than this. Every little detail I like. I like the fact that we've got these 25 percentage point kind of like grid with its little sections, because it just helps you break things up and really understand how things are. And I think I talked about this last week. The fact that there's a percentage sign after the 90, but after nothing else, I really like. It's just a tiny little details like that make things great. I just really like it. I don't know what your thoughts are.
I like it too. I think the one thing it would benefit from is maybe just a little bit of context for those like Charlie who don't know who Bob Ross is. I mean, the paintings of Bob Ross to me is clear enough, but the percentage containing each element is a little bit obscure. So I would maybe write a couple of sentences here that maybe mention that, he normally paints nature scene or wilderness, and there are a lot of things that show up in pretty much every picture, just so that people have a bit more context of where this is going and why they should care, because then they can look for, okay, so now I'm curious, what are the things he paints all the time and what are the things he maybe doesn't?
Yep.
Okay. And next up we have Armand, and this is his first ever viz, so I wanted to make sure to include it. So welcome to Makeover Monday. I hope you get a chance to actually watch this as well. And let's bring this up into a bit larger. It's still loading. I'm not sure what the challenge here is, why this is loading for such a long time.
No, me neither. But so Armand, because it's quite a limited data set in a way. It's quite you can move it around and do stuff like Andy did yesterday on his Watch Me Viz session, but it was quite limited. So Armin's taken the approach of trying to unearth something in there. So I've looked at the data briefly and saw there's a lot of trees in there. So I guess this guy likes doing landscapes and stuff like that.
I'm just going to bring up the picture because I don't want to wait for it to load.
I don't know why mine's doing it as well. There's no image or anything.
Yeah, it's really weird. So the first thing I noticed, actually, because I was looking at the bottom, it says inspired by Viz Biz Bi, but it should be Viz Wiz Bi, so it's W instead of B. So yeah, make sure to get that corrected. Now the title launches straight into it. Nearly 40% of all objects drawn in paintings by Bob Ross are trees. And again, I'm missing a bit of the context. What if someone doesn't know who Bob Ross is? What if someone hasn't seen a picture of his? Because they're all very recognizable and they all have, his typical style. But translating that into a couple of sentences so that people are like, oh, okay, that's why we're talking about the elements in his pictures.
Does this include all of the elements? It looks like it's being cut short a little bit.
Yeah, I think it might be, maybe some of them are summarized because there were a few different frames, like oval and rectangular, and they've all now been called framed. I'm thinking there are a few groupings going on in there.
Yeah, but I mean, I quite like the fact that it's found a nugget of information within the data to say that Bob likes trees, and it's got just nice use of just reinforcing that at the top by showing that trees are green, colouring the bars green, so it's nice and clean. And I think unless you really delve deep, there isn't that much information within the data, so it's a good summarised way of doing it. It's nice and clean, so I think it's a good effort.
Yeah, it is. In terms of the grouping, I would say a couple of things have probably been overlooked. So oval frame should be part of framed, and cumulus should probably be part of clouds. So just to make sure that they're consistent.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess the question is, do you put snowy mountains with at least two mountains or with mountain?
Yeah.
Well, so snowy mountain singular can probably go with mountain, but yeah, I'll leave that up to Armand to decide. Okay. And next up we have Kostov. And this one, is that even, oh yeah. So it says, okay, where the hell is the picture? Code.
I think it's just another image one. I think it's another R stats.
Okay, let's just bring up the picture. Now, the first thing is you have to get the name right in the title, because I immediately discredit everything else when it says Boss Ross instead of Bob Ross. Yeah. But to me, this looks like lips. Which lips? I'll let everyone else decide. But, you know, it's like, what does this have to do with trees and what, like, yeah, I don't understand the choice given the subject. Because clearly something was, you know, clearly Kostov's thought about, okay, let's create this visual. So I'm trying to find the connection to the topic.
Yeah, I'm trying to. So what I quite like the idea behind it. What I would really like to do is, so I can't really understand the relationship between the seasons, so the x-axis and the y. So I get that there's a lot of trees, so there's high frequency. That's cool. I know that, and I know there's a bunch of mountains and some other stuff. I don't quite get the relationship with the. So the x-axis, there were series and episodes and stuff like that, weren't there? But just the nature of that distribution implies that there were fewer episodes in early seasons or something like that. I don't get it. And then fewer episodes in later seasons. So I don't quite get the shape of it. But if I ignore that, what I'd really like to do is almost replicate a landscape. This is me being a bit abstract and I can't do this, so I'm uncomfortable. But I'd like to replicate the sort of the layout of a landscape by have the lake in the foreground, have the mountains as the first element you see, because they would be in the, well, you'd have the mountains, you'd have the clouds above it, the grass at the foot of the mountains, perhaps. So you know what I mean? Just so it's like
the
in
logical ordering of the elements rather than maybe the quantity.
Yeah, which is probably a bad idea from a data perspective, but in terms of like a little spin on how you would paint a landscape or photograph a landscape, I think it would be quite a nice idea. And just to tie the colouring into the things, so to have the lakes as blue, the clouds as white, grass as green, and, you know, trees as brown or something like that. I think it'd be quite cool to replicate that.
I agree, because also, I don't know, there's hardly ever red in his pictures. It's a lot of greens and blues and greys and browns, so bringing that in would be good. Oh yeah, somebody already said that in the tweet, actually, you know, couldn't the clouds be above the trees? But yeah, definitely restructuring that. The trees should also probably be in front of the mountains, because the mountains were usually a really large item where you wouldn't see individual trees. And I think with the seasons, my impression was that he paints, so there are, I don't remember how many seasons, like 30-something seasons, and each season had 13 episodes, and in each episode he paints a picture. So shouldn't this be almost like a rectangle? Like, I don't understand why there are fewer things in the beginning. Yeah,
I don't get that, 'cause it's like just pinched at either end, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's a bit confusing. But in terms of like, this is one of those ones where I have to like, I like the visual look of it. It might not be the greatest analytical piece, but as a visual attraction, it works really, really well. So I just think a little more detail in really trying to tie it better to Bob Ross's work would be really good.
Yeah, agreed. And then we have Lisa Rapp. Okay, so we have some people agreeing that they don't quite understand the season shape, and also people asking about the grouping. And I think it's difficult because we don't know what logic was applied in the original viz compared to the underlying data set. I think it's a matter of judgment, really. I'm also not... Okay, Tablet Public seems to be having issues. Oh, it just loaded as I clicked out.
It's really slow today, isn't it?
I'm just going to click on the images for now. So this is by Lisa, and we've got bar charts, the legendary paintings of Bob Ross, top 20 most used elements. I think that could be described a bit more like in a sentence. It sounds a bit kind of cold, given that we're talking about artwork.
Yeah, so just a little simple thing like what are the elements that Bob used in most of his paintings or something like that, just to, yeah, like you say, make a sentence so it's a little bit more accessible.
Yeah. So,
okay. Straightforward bar. So Public has loaded for me, so I can switch between the two guess, workbooks. So she's made it interactive, so you can look for a specific painting by selecting one or perhaps more, hopefully, elements to filter down the number of. That's quite cool. So you can pick out, I want a bit of beach, a bit of grass, and some night sky, and it will tell you what paintings included all of those elements. So it's a bit similar to what Andy did yesterday with, I think, I can't remember who originally did it, but they called it basket analysis, of saying how often do you get a Bob Ross picture with a tree and also a mountain, and Lisa's done it so you can select these different elements and it will show you which paintings include all the bits you want. So it's nice, nice interactivity. I'm not really wild about this background. It's a bit sort of like a old school PowerPoint graduated background.
Yeah, I'm not sure I love it. It's just, again, the colors don't make me think of Bob Ross's paintings, because it looks very much like a sunrise or sunrise, sunset, those kind of colors, rather than nature and mountains and trees.
Yeah, you used to get bad T-shirts like this back in the 90s that everyone had for a spell. Or they were called Global Hypercolor or something like that.
Yeah.
Everyone had a T-shirt like this. That's what it reminds me of.
Maybe that could be a lesson for this week, to really, if you do make deliberate color choices, to consider, do they match the topic? Because there are always associations with color, I suppose.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Then we have OJ Green, a sad attempt at a happy tree. Okay, I'll give one more chance to Tableau Public, but if it doesn't load immediately, then I will. Okay. Now I need to zoom out again. Okay, this is not. I'm not patient enough for this kind of stuff. So it's going to be images today.
It's a bit weird, isn't it? Because if Tableau are doing something with the server, well, in America it's like what, like 11 in the morning or it's like 8 in the morning. I don't know why they'd be doing it now. It's a bit weird.
I don't know. I wonder if it has to do with 2020.4.
No, maybe.
Yeah, who knows? A statistical analysis of the work of Bob Ross, and I have to say I quite like the tree, because it does look like there are those trees in the background image, and I just think, I mean, I cannot read any words that are inside of it because they're quite small, but I do like the effort there.
Yeah, it's good. And then we're just going to have to play a game of guess what the functionality is. But obviously you can see in the image that there's a light green deciduous highlighted. So obviously there's a little highlight action that just picks out a tear on the tree, which is quite cool.
I guess the challenge here is probably that the things that are most rare or least frequent are at the top, so they look like they're most important.
Yeah, that's the only thing. Is it? Yeah, it looks wrong, and you can't really fix that because you've either got an upside down tree or you've got something where the width represent the smaller width is the better. So it's a bit awkward, but because I think we're going to get a lot of playful vizzes this week. From what I've seen on Twitter, there's a bit of creativity, and that's fine. So I think we give OG a bit of slack this week. I think it's quite nice.
Absolutely. And what I want to suggest with pictures, because I saw a lot of people use pictures this week. Now, I know there is some sort of fair use policy sometimes, but strictly speaking, you shouldn't use pictures that you don't have express permission to use. So if you use the face of Bob Ross, in theory, I guess they could maybe sue you for copyright infringements, and I don't want to see that happen. It's probably quite unlikely that they stumble across your work and say, oh my God, we're going to sue them. But just as a word of caution, what I would recommend for background images and those kind of things, take your own, create your own. Like if you're good at drawing stuff, maybe you can create a caricature of Bob Ross. I don't know about gray zones, like creating a Bitmoji of him, but there are plenty of websites with free stock images like Unsplash, and all you need to do is you credit the person who took the picture. They even give you the reference, and you just put that in your stuff at the bottom, in your footer. And I think that's the right thing to do, because even if you never get sued, I think it looks more professional that you have considered the author or the original designer or artist, and don't, like, Google Photos is not a source. Google Photos is not, or Google Images is not sufficient as a source. Like, you should only use pictures that you have permission to use.
Yep. Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Now, on to Michelle Freeman, and I do believe that she is online. At least I hope she is.
So I've managed to get mine to load. So if you like click in advance, you can get them coming through. So I've got this one, and it's got all like the classic hallmarks of Michelle's work. So there's always big numbers. Gone for a word cloud, Michelle. So that's.
I know. Okay. I forgot that I gave up on Tableau Public, but here we are with a picture. And she always has that really blocky font, doesn't she?
Yeah, and I like it when people sort of land on a sort of style that they like, because there's quite a few people when you can see, just glance at a piece of work and you know it's theirs. And I think I pretty much would have known this was Michelle's, even if I didn't know it was Michelle's.
Yeah.
So it's nice. I've not done it yet, but this is kind of what I had in my head, was just like a heat map, because we had the seasons, and it makes the prevalence of trees really stand out, doesn't it? You've got that dark strip of a couple of like row 4 and 5 of just consistently every season he likes a tree, and then you've got these little patterns of, he went through his cumulus phase. So this is where I love heat maps, because you can just spot stuff, can't you? And I just think it's a really, really effective way of showing trends within the information, almost to the extent that I wonder what value the right-hand section adds.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, I like the heat map, and it took me a little while, but I figured out why the trees are at the top and then it's everything else. I wonder if there's a way to like visually break it up just a little bit, maybe putting a line on top of it or so. But yeah, the word cloud, now I get why, but I'm not sure if it's going to be easy for people to interact. Yeah, or if they would. Yeah.
It's like my guess of why it's had to be done this way is because it's that compromise, isn't it? Because there's loads of elements, and you can't have them running down in the columns, because otherwise you've got to twist your head to read those. So that's why it's so tall. But there's only 31 seasons, so you wouldn't have really wide squares for the seasons, because it would look silly. So you naturally end up with this shape, and so you end up with loads of white space on the right otherwise. So it had to be filled with something. So I'm assuming that's why that decision's been made. But I would always say that it's fine for you to do a really skinny and tall chart if you want, or it's fine to do a really wide and short one. So don't always have to force ourselves to pad out space to what might be a more conventional layout.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, nicely done, and very consistent coloring and everything. So next we have Ahmad Grawal.
I think he's in the chat.
I think so too. I'm going to bring up the full picture. Of course, I can't interact if Tableau... I mean, I can give it a try. Maybe load it in the background. This is another one where, I mean, I said that you could run into copyright issues. Oh, okay, so you praised the painting was one I bought from Shutterstock. Okay, let's see if this loads, Ahmad.
Yeah, it did not at all for me.
Yeah, it doesn't look very promising, but I'm just clicking on the picture now. And thank you for considering that. And I don't expect anyone to actually purchase it. Like, if you have credits, that's fine, but there will be free ones available. I think it's just, it's better that way. So I like his idea. Okay, it loaded, yay. Yeah. So I can hover over the mountain, and then the Vision Tooltips doesn't load. Now, this is not you guys' fault. This is on Tableau Public. Okay, I'm going to give up, sorry. But I like the idea of exploring the different elements. I think the dots, do you find them noticeable enough? I mean, I do, but what do you think about those?
I think they're quite they're noticeable. Actually, we'll move. The next one's very similar, and I think the dots are probably more visible in this one than the one that we'll come on to next. But yeah, it's a nice idea, because it's not the same as what you've done, but the work that you submitted this week, which I'm sure other people have seen, and if not, they will see. It's because there's not masses to the data, it's kind of good to spin it and look at it through a different lens. So you looked at the stuff where there's only one element ever used, and this is similar, like aggregating things up and just making it slightly simpler. So I like the idea of how it's done. It's just a shame that Tableau Public's rubbish today.
Yeah. No, I like it too. I wonder if you could, Ahmad, just put a little bit more text in there. Make the title nice and large to really draw people in. And maybe even just the paintings of Bob Ross or something, short and sharp. But then a couple of sentences, maybe a paragraph that just explains, who he is, what he typically draws, and why I should just because when I ask myself, should I bother hovering over a picture to see how many trees Bob Ross painted? I probably wouldn't bother unless I know he paints this stuff all the time, and there's this really interesting trend to his pictures that over 30 years he almost always painted trees. Just see that for yourself. So maybe engaging the audience a bit more by making them want to click and interact.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we have, I've gone back and forth. Where is my collection? Sorry. Oh, god damn it. Okay. Trying to get back to my collection of pictures. Here we are. Next one is Varun. And this is also his first viz for Makeover.
So I clicked this a while ago, so it's loaded for me, luckily. So it's essentially the same, different image, and unlike the previous one where we know that it was definitely bought, all of your previous comments apply, because this doesn't necessarily look like it's been an image where it's being paid for. So just be really, really careful. But that apart, it's similar. So there's in the circles, you hover over it, there's viz and tooltips that reveal a little bar chart. So rather than talking about percentages, it just shows you how, in absolute terms, stuff appeared. And if you hover over the trees, that's quite sneaky. They're I don't even know what type of chart it is. It's like these funny staggered pyramids that pop up in tree shape. So that's quite nice. Let's see what the cliffs do. It's a bit slow. Yeah, public is rubbish today. So I think so. If we put aside the problem with whether the image was paid for or not, I think it's got it's got all the goodness of the prior one. There's all these font colors though. They're a bit, I don't need them. They're it's just a bit unnecessary. So I'd probably just stick to one. And that's probably my main feedback. There's no need for all of that color.
Yes, I agree. And I would make the circles filled circles rather than just these outlines, because they're quite difficult to see. And there is no reference here to Bob Ross. And he's the whole, he's the catch thing, right? The catchphrase is Bob Ross. That's why people would click. This is not something that would make me interact, because I don't see any reason why. And if I have to choose between 100 different visitors to interact with, I'm going to take the ones that make it very clear why I should. And this one to me doesn't do that yet.
Yep.
Okay. And then we have John, and he has created I guess it's like a heat map with a bar chart.
Yeah, it's like a heat map with a bar chart. So it's a bit like a marginal histogram in a way. And there's the heat map's almost like little brush strokes. So that's quite nice. The color choice it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because so the color choices, I don't know what is driving it. I guess it's more blue and they're more frequent in a certain season, but I always in my head correspond an element with a color. So to have trees that are blue and water that's green feels a bit odd to me. So I don't know how I would get around that, but you almost have to use these colors of nature, don't you? But it's you get that association, which is a bit awkward.
Yeah, and I guess the elements look like the waves, which makes me think all of it is water, but it's not.
Yeah, they do look like. So I thought of them as brush strokes, but yeah, you could see them as waves as well. So it's tricky, and you can't really when you look across the seasons. I can't really tell the difference on between any of them. So there's a bit on rocks, you get that variability on colour, but if you look at the first 5 or 6 rows, there's not really much difference there. And when you get down to the bottom end, there's really no variability at all. So I think when we think back to Michelle's, where it was a more conventional heat map, you could spot those patterns more easily, perhaps because it was a square rather than a shape, so it filled the whole space and you got that more pronounced trend through it. So again, it's a playful one where a shape's being used, but I don't know that in isolation makes things super clear, which is why the bars to the side are helpful.
Yes. One thing I would say is it talks about all the elements across all the seasons, but in the subtitle or the little description, it talks about, I ever wonder how many times Bob Ross included a happy little tree or mountain in his paintings. Why are we looking at all this other stuff if it's just about trees and mountains? So I would either adjust the text or adjust the viz, because I'm getting a bit of a disconnect here between, I thought it was about trees and mountains, but I'm getting lots of other things as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Chimdi Nosu. The paintings of Bob Ross. And we've got another heat map, so we can probably move fairly quickly. But colors that make me not think of Bob Ross at all. So, yeah. And then number of times an element was used across all episodes. Percentage use out of all other elements. I'm already struggling. Maybe because it's 4:30 in the afternoon, but what does this have to do with art? Like, it sounds very, what do you call it? Like, very cold and mathematical for something that's art and color and beauty. Am I wrong?
I'm trying to get my head around the definition of B. So percentage use out of all other elements used in the paintings. I'm being really slow, aren't I?
I'm guessing A, B, and C are 3 different types of table calculations, and it's just how they're calculated is different, is my guess.
Percentage use across all paint. Yeah, so I can't quite get my head around those. So I get your point about it doesn't make you think necessarily of artiness, but then equally, it's a project of analysis, and I really do like the layout. So I don't know what B and C necessarily is showing, but I really like lots of the elements. So the title, I really love how the color legend's there. It's almost as like an underlining piece. So I really, really like little details like that. I love just the shape of everything. And so whilst the colors don't feel super naturey, and I totally agree with you on that, I think layout wise it's perfect. I think Chimdi should perhaps think of a better way to articulate what these metrics B and C actually are, because I can't get my head around it at all. But I just like little stuff like the seasons and the arrow and the elements and the arrow. Really, really nice. And earlier when I was constructively, hopefully critical of Michelle's for having the word cloud and the big numbers to the side, Chimdi's is showing you actually it's totally fine to have this tall but narrow viz, because I think it's a really good impact and it's the right size and I can look at it really well. So I really like it. I would definitely consider moving to a more natural color scheme and just think about B and C. I just think it's really nice.
Yeah, I like it too, and I totally agree with you on basically everything. The wording of A, B, and C is just what I'm struggling with, and I think that's what I meant by, it sounds very mathematical, because I don't get it. And I think if Charlie and I are struggling with it as people who have looked at a lot of vizes, then other people will also struggle with it. So maybe it could be something like the number of times an element, and maybe even in brackets you could say, for example, tree, mountain, lake. So people know what's meant by an element. Was used across all episodes, that's fine. Percentage use out of all other elements. So maybe this could be how much was an element used compared to all other possible elements across the 403 paintings. Like, just something that's a bit easier to understand. So maybe if you have, I don't know, a flatmate, family, colleagues, read out your descriptions to them and ask them if they understand what you mean. And sometimes we just get caught up because we understand it in our head, it makes sense to us, but it might not make sense to everyone else.
Yeah, and if you try to articulate it again in your head and you struggle, just bin it, because it's obviously not perfect. And looking at it again, you've got a decimal place on B but not on C. So for continuity, if you're going to include both of those things, just choose to have a decimal place consistently.
Yeah.
But yeah, layout, love it.
Yeah. And then we have Kevin Wee, and he is online and active, and he has used Chris Love as inspiration. So Bob Ross is the joy of painting. So he has a bit of context, which I like. And the chart below indicates that plants and water bodies are the most common categories. I mean, yes, but now I need some help from people who know more about this. Are trees considered plants?
Yeah, I'd say so, but I'm not a botanist. But it's got roots, it's in the ground. That's kind of planty, isn't it?
Yeah, I just wasn't sure whether trees are their own thing. And I guess for me, when I think of plants, I think more of like shrubs and small things. And I would draw them very differently than I would draw a tree. And trees are like the main thing among his plants. So I don't know if I would lump them all under plants.
Yeah, and there were comparatively few like just flowery things, weren't they? So yeah, they are quite distinct, different things, I guess.
So Kevin says he's updated a picture. Okay. It looks very similar to me, but okay, here we go again.
I like this chart type. So I can remember when Chris Love first shared it, and I didn't get it initially, but now that I've seen them, I think it's a brilliant way of showing when you've got a multi-element thing like a painting and you're talking about trees or flowers or water. It's a really great way for you to see actually how many times are all of these things appearing concurrently in a picture. So it's basically saying about a third of the time Bob's drawn a bit of water, a cloud, a rock, and a plant. So it's really easy to see, and then you can see that actually only 1% of the time has he done a plant with some water and some landscape and a human. So I think it's a really effective way having these sort of connected dots underneath. So I applaud Kevin for using it, because it's a really good use case.
Yeah, I really like the chart. I would just, personally, I don't know if I love the categories. I would probably stick to maybe something like trees and plants. Water bodies, yeah, makes me think of like wakeboarding or something, like a body in water. I know what it means, of course, but it doesn't make me think of a lake or a river. And then atmosphere, what's wrong with clouds? I think those are more like, they're easier to connect with, but I'll leave that up to you. I just want to give my input on that.
Yeah, I guess actually plants probably had to be created because if you look at it, it really drops off from the 29% down to the 9%. So if you separate flowers and trees and all of that stuff out, everything would just flatline and it wouldn't have that pronounced effect. So it's probably a deliberate grouping decision.
Yeah.
But it's nice, Kevin, doing good stuff every week.
Okay, so that's actually a question I had as well. Would you spell Bob Ross with apostrophe S or Bob Ross just apostrophe? Because I never know how to do that when people have so many S's in their names. I
would just do an apostrophe, but yeah, okay. I think that's the thing, when your surname ends with an S, you just do an apostrophe. But if it doesn't, an apostrophe S.
Okay, cool. Then let's move on to RJ Manshani. Okay, so there is seasons. Personal opinion, sure, I could click on a random season, but I find with TV shows, even if it's just 3 seasons, I probably don't know which one, what happened in which season, even if I've seen every episode. So I don't know if people would click on the season unless they know, for example, oh my god, season 5, he just drew mountains or something like that. So I think the numbers, because they don't reveal anything, I'm not sure if this is going to be something the audience will use.
Yeah, I agree. And then, there's 403 episodes there. So, that really stretches it. You're not going to say, oh, I must look back at 363 because that was that great one with the duck and a tree. And the bar chart's just lost, isn't it, at the bottom, because it's got so little vertical space to actually breathe in that it's it's like an incidental thing. So the circles totally dominate it. So I think it's just got layout issues that need addressing to make it interactive. So public has finally loaded for me, and it's just a bit awkward. So when you introduce functionality to help people navigate a viz, you've got to make it intuitive, and you've also got to make sure that if it's going to be used, it's going to make the charts work okay. And because we've got the labels rotated for the elements, loads of them are truncated. So like all the double word stuff, I can't see. Anything with a longer description, I can't see fully. The labels for the values, the absolute numbers are rotated as well. So it just becomes an accessibility hurdle. So
yeah,
just think about that layout.
And one thing I would suggest, now I don't know where the text came from, but it sounds a bit copied and pasted, to be honest. And I don't want to make some incorrect assumptions here, but it sounds like something that would maybe be written on Wikipedia. In general, please, please, please always paraphrase. If there is something where you're like, oh my God, that's a brilliant sentence, at least quote it. Because if you don't write it and you just copy and paste, then it's not really right to pretend that you've written it. And in terms of, if that interests people, I do check in my favorites if people have copied and pasted from originals, and that no matter how great the viz is, that will not make it into the favorites, because I think that's a bit lazy. And it also isn't something that, as like if you can do outstanding analysis, I'm sure you can write a few sentences in your own voice. So not picking on RJ, I just think it sounds a bit like something that would be on Wikipedia. So if that is the case, make sure to update the text. And if anyone else has just copied and pasted into the viz, that is something in general that you should paraphrase in your own words.
And what do you think of the prominence of the background image on this one? Because it was always going to be an issue that we'd have to address this week with, is that balance right?
I find it a bit distracting, especially because of the red dots. I actually would make the dots, like all of the stuff that's red, I would probably make more like a dark grey, because I think it would create more contrast. Plus, I don't understand why it's red, because nothing else is red. I also, the image of Bob Ross, I'm not sure if that's like copyrighted or something.
Okay.
Then we have Saverio.
Yes, Saverio Ricchetti.
That's a pretty cool name.
And this one's got some complexity to it. So Tableau Public today is just like, meh, just really isn't bothering at all. So I don't even know what you call this. I don't know what elements of this you call. So there's like a packed circle, which is, visually it's, I guess, engaging, but I don't know what I'm doing here. So the only way you get any value out of this viz is you have to hover over everything. And I don't know how many elements there are in total, but there's hundreds looking at all these dots. So like, I can't understand how this really is expected to be interpreted, because I can hover over trees in many places. So it's like, this is like a plot for every single element, isn't it? Every season, every episode. So I've got some trees that are purple. I've got some that are green, some that are blue, some that are yellow, because it's all about how frequently they're shown in each episode. So the same thing is being represented multiple times, but in different ways. So it makes it, whoa, what's going on in my head?
I find this viz, it looks like a lot of effort for, I'm afraid to say, not much value at all. Like, I try to always design my Makeover Monday vizes as a static image. It should work as a static image, at least work enough to make people click on the link, because on Twitter we post images and most people don't have the patience to click through to Tableau Public and explore it unless they're in data viz themselves. But this here, I can't understand as an image. I don't know what favorite elements means. I don't know what elements by episode means. Title episode, why is there a rainbow chart of the titles of the episode? Here, many colors have many different meanings, and I just don't understand why I should bother doing any interactions. I don't see what value I'm going to get out of this. I don't know if I'm going to learn something.
Yeah, I think that's those are the core things. Are how am I supposed to interact with this? So I've got my public's working. So at the bottom, the sort of squiggly chart, each of those fronds is like an element. So trees on the far right, because that's the most used element. We're not in all the work, but it's coloured purple. But then all of these purple things in the like eyeball there, are they all trees? Oh, they are all trees. So there is consistency there, but it's like the same things reflected multiple times. The title episode overlaps because the episode isn't solely about trees or solely about water. So there's all this overlap. It's just confusing.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. Okay. The next one I'm really curious about. So I am going to try the Tableau Public link, see if it's going to work. Because we like to live dangerously. Okay. Oh God, this is so useless. Okay, just the picture then. Oh, is there a title? Didn't I just see a title? No, there.
Yeah, Bob Ross's favourite element.
Oh, there are two images. I clicked on the second one. Okay, so it should be favorite elements. So what I like are these little bar charts. I think that's cool.
Yeah, and I guess those are each of the 30 ones. Yeah, so they're each of the seasons. So, I mean, that's really effective as well, isn't it? It's like even when you think of a heat map and seeing the intensity of the colour in each square, that helps. But this is just as good, isn't it, in terms of showing you just how often he was painting trees, and relative to like Cumulus or River, you can just see that difference, and it doesn't feel too inefficient to use this rather than a little square with colour intensity as the encoding factor. So yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, I like this viz and the analysis. Okay, what I would say, where it says Copper Winter is the episode with the highest percentage of trees. The percentage of trees in yellow is really hard to see. I would almost even do something like draw an arrow to it, because I'm struggling to draw my eyes to the right circle, because it's on the far right, so I'm more looking onto the left and the center, and it takes a little bit of effort to go to the far right. And on the first image, which I'm guessing is maybe the top part, I don't know if I would call it favoritism for trees. Maybe it's a preference for trees, or his love of trees, but favoritism sounds negative. Like, somebody is favoring one child over the other child or something.
I wonder, with the bottom section, I wonder if it does it unearth enough of a pattern or a standout thing to warrant its own section? Because when you glance at it, and so yeah, he likes trees. You can see spells where it looks like randomly, like episode 5 of each season seems to have not that many trees compared to some of the other seasons. So like early on, his episode 1 always has got a tree, and it's like he has to start each season with a tree because he likes them. I just wonder if there's enough story behind using that chart to warrant its inclusion.
Yeah, that's a good point. And maybe that is something to say, I was looking for a pattern, but I couldn't find one, because that's also okay, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, okay. There is a comment in the chat I want to address, and maybe what I'll try is load the next one in Tableau Public in the meantime. So Viviante Santosa asks, she wants to learn how to make the line stuff, and Denise says the dendrogram. So what do you think of dendrograms and all the curvy bits we've started noticing in visits?
You can probably guess. So I think what I would say, if I'm Viviante and saying, I want to know how to make those line things, what are they called? Well, if you don't know what they're called, why do you want to do them? And they add nothing. So they're pretty garnish. They can attract you, but when you look at how they're often used, they're just kind of used as like a left-sided element to the actual data itself. So you'll see bar charts coming off them. So the conclusion you draw still relates to the proper data itself and not these curly bits of spaghetti. So I think, if you were to do an infographic or something like that, maybe it's useful. For general everyday analysis, it's just it's just a fairly pointless bit of garnish.
I agree. And garnish is a really good word, because think of it maybe like cooking. You can say, I want to create a Michelin star chef dish, but if you don't know how to boil an egg or cook pasta or potatoes, maybe start with that. And I'm not saying that to be condescending at all. I think the pasta and the potatoes, that's where it's at in Database, because everyone gets it and most people like it. Yeah. Some people might not like foie gras and that other kind of stuff, haute cuisine and all of that. So depending on what you want to achieve with data viz or your data visualization skills, use Makeover Monday to gain the skills that will be most useful for you in your day-to-day life and your job. If your job is to communicate data effectively and to help organizations make better decisions with data, don't do the curvy stuff. I think it's more important to do the basics and figure out how to communicate really effectively what you have found. It's something I'm very passionate about. I know Charlie is, I know Andy is, and it's something I want to focus on more in the new year, because I think that's where we all have room for improvement. We can all build viz, but can we actually say what our key message is? Because if you don't get that across, it doesn't matter how pretty your viz is, people won't find any use in it. So yes, I would totally encourage you to just stick to the basics until you have found the place where I've got this nailed, which takes a while.
And you couldn't have said that any better. So first and foremost, the end audience has to understand what you're doing, and then there's a law of diminishing returns with stuff. So if you're creating a dendrogram or a chord diagram or a Sankey or anything like that, it takes quite a while. And there's always value in learning how to do stuff, but I think I'm pretty sure you'll find that once you've learned how to do a dendrogram, you're not doing that very often. You're not going to be doing that in a business environment very often at all. So it's like disposable knowledge, and I'd rather fill my brain with reusable knowledge than stuff I'm not going to use again and again.
Yeah, that's a really valid point. Those things are really hard to maintain, and if you think how much you need to learn to build them and build them really well, imagine how much effort it is for your audience to understand. And if you present them with a different chart every week, they have to learn every time, and they just want to know the information and make a decision. So don't feel like you have to learn the fancy stuff. None of us do it, and we've done all right for our careers with it. So stick to the basics and build the foundation, because if you don't have a good foundation, it will show eventually and people will poke holes in it.
Yeah, definitely. We're on our soapboxes.
Someone says, cool looking stuff gets the most likes, but it's not a popularity contest. And sorry for being really frank, but do you really care what other people on the internet think? You don't even have to care what we think. It's about your skills. And I know all the social media stuff can really get under people's skin and can make them feel good or bad. But if you're my visitors don't get a lot of likes, but I don't care. I put it out there because I want to learn. And I know that needs a bit of confidence, to build that, to say, I don't really care. But there is a saying that I have taken to heart, and that is, what other people think of me is none of my business. So don't worry about the likes, the retweets, the viz of the day. It really doesn't matter. It's all about what you learn, and because you're the one who turns it into dollars in your career, or euros or pounds, and into promotions and into really cool things.
Yep, exactly.
Okay. All right. Now, thankfully, this time has helped us to load Masato's viz. I'm not going to put it into full screen mode. I'm just worried it'll start loading again. But what do we have here?
So this is similar to what Andy did yesterday, and he was inspired not by Masato, but there was somebody else from Japan whose name I've forgotten, which is annoying. I don't know if it's in here. I don't think it is. But so the idea is, how many times do these combinations of elements occur? And then you can just, it just reveals his tree obsession a little bit more. So I'd imagine Masato's just watched Andy's viz and reused it. And to be honest, I did the very same yesterday, because I had this in my head and had no idea how to do it, because I don't instinctively think, oh yeah, of course you've got to duplicate the data source, do these index calcs, and then do this, that, and the other. It's not instinctive to me. So it's good, and I think one of the best things about when Andy did it and when the original submission I saw that did it was that they actually reduced the number of elements that they plotted in here, because this is big and you get that sparsity down at the bottom, because the frame elements are really rarely used, so you just end up with a lot of dead space in the viz. So I think it would have made sense to perhaps clip this to just show the foliage and nature elements, and then you'd have a more dense viz with a bit more. It would just work a bit better because there's a lot of dead space in there.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it look a bit just awkward, because I'm like, is there something missing? Was there no data? The gaps are actually what makes me ask questions, because it's odd when I go from the nicely filled kind of heat map style in the top left. So yeah.
But it's a really nice way of plotting relationships between information. So if people haven't watched Andy's video, which he did yesterday, it's on this channel, have a look at it, because it's a really simple exercise, and it works. It really does work quite well.
Yeah. Okay. Next in line, where are we? Jeremy Johnson. Jeremy Johnson. I'll go with the picture again. So, okay, somebody asked, how can we have a combination which has a line, bar, and area chart in a single view? These charts are done easily in Excel. How to do it in Tableau? Now, I know there is this drive to create everything in a single view, but I don't know why. Like, why not just make it a dashboard? Make life easy for yourself.
It's very rare that you really actually want to plot multiple metrics in the same chart. So people where I work do it all the time, and I'm quite open and honest with them and say that it looks terrible, because it does look terrible. So it's not good to be efficient at the detriment of understanding. So if I'm going to plot sales, profit, and units sold in one chart, it's just a mess. So like Eva said, separate stuff, because otherwise you just see a lot of noise, and you can't really understand what's going on. So it's fine to use lots of simple charts rather than one mash of everything.
Yeah. So the same person, Shri Vidya, asked, this was a client requirement. So first thing is, we're not in the business of giving free consulting advice, but what I would say is, are you the expert or is the client the expert? Because if the client says, I want you to do this and this and this viz, then it's your job to say, what is your question? I'm going to find the answer.
We have to educate, don't we, as well? So you can say, it's not a good idea to do this, and these are the reasons why. This is the alternative I suggest. And if you have to, this is what you asked for, and put them side by side. And if they don't prefer the better option, then you just bite your tongue, suck it up. They're paying you, move on to the next person.
Yes, and I actually did that in the job where I started with Tableau, which was at a bank in Australia. And I was trying to build a business case around Tableau, and I went to the CFO of the entire group, and I showed him, I was asked to do a P&L in Tableau with conditional formatting, blue and green fonts for expenses and revenue and all of that. And I did like 20 floating sheets on top of each other. It was terrible, but I made it happen. But I also showed them, this is how we should do this. And I think just having the comparison is really good. But I would say you as the analyst, the Tableau developer, whatever your title is, you're the expert when it comes to data visualization. You should provide maybe 1, 2, 3 options, but don't let them tell you, build me a bar chart. Like, that's not their job. That is, it's like if somebody said, hey, architect, I want you to build a house exactly to these specifications. Like, why do you need me? The client should come with the questions, maybe some ideas, but you should then push back, because otherwise you're just a report monkey, and that's not fun. That's not fun at all. Okay, now this I have a struggle with, because I don't know why, but it's 2 pictures and it's broken up, and I have seen screenshots before where people take a photo of their screen and stuff. Like, why not just take a picture of the entire screen? I don't get it.
It's a shame, because it's actually quite a cool viz, because cool. The stripes, they do look like kind of brush strokes, and so it's basically just a bar chart, but it looks so cool. So I don't actually know how Jeremy's done this, to be quite honest. I don't know if they're just shapes that are sized, but they're all different. And it doesn't look like there's... What the hell has he? Okay, it's like a bit of random use. So each of these is a circle, and it's like just a concentration of dots for each element. I think it's brilliant. I think it's really playful, and there's loads of downsides to using this way of presenting data, but he's labelled it clearly so you can see. You get round the fact that it's a bunch of dots. I really like it. I don't know if Bob's known for being some kind of psychedelic 70s groover kind of guy, but that's kind of what it implies to me. But I really like it.
I do too. I think this is really clever. There's one small change I would make, and I hope it stays around. It's next to his name, Bob Ross, there's a paintbrush, but it looks more like a broom because it's...
Yeah.
So I would just turn that, upside down so that it looks more like a paintbrush. But other than that, I mean, I can't, it's not really loading, unfortunately, but I think it's really clever. And just a fun spin, like Charlie said.
Yeah, it's nice.
Okay, and then we have something different again, and this is Quentin. Oh, does he have an image? Because... here we go. There is a picture. Everybody likes mountains, but Bob liked trees more. There's Bob, the subject of Bob Ross. I wonder if this is I guess this is the font, if it's a picture, during 31 seasons of the joy of painting. What do you think?
I'm just waiting for Tableau again being incredibly slow, which is annoying. So I guess... Oh, there isn't a picture, is there? So the problem is I want to interact with it to understand, because obviously I know now that he liked a few trees. The way the chart is, it kind of looks like just a mountain range, doesn't it? With loads of just a rolling mountain range, and obviously it isn't all mountains, but I just wanted to prove that by being able to hover over stuff. So it's, without being able to interact, it's quite difficult to understand what's going on. So it looks like, I assume this is episodes or seasons running across the bottom. There looks like there's some seasons where there's a real peak, so maybe he threw loads on the canvas in some seasons and had spells where he was quite minimalist and didn't bother putting another tree on there. But there's a lot of lines. There's not as many lines as there were elements, I don't think, in the original data, so there's some aggregation going on. But you can't really separate the wood for the trees. See what I've done? Because of the just the sheer volume of dimensions that are on there, or dimension members.
Yeah, I agree. It's a bit hard with a static image. And again, I'm sorry that Tableau Public isn't quite cooperating. One thing I would suggest is, I don't love the colors. There's quite a lot of them. So we've got brown, we've got orange, we've got blue, we've got black, we've got the background, which is beige. Then we have green and we have white. And I don't know why. I think this would look a bit simpler. And also the font, I don't mind it in the title, but where it says the subject of Bob Ross, and then you've got this, I think it reminds me of papyrus, or I don't know how to say that word, but there's a font that is like Egyptian kind of font. And I find it just hard to read. Why not just keep the same font? And why make the footer green? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So the next one might be a challenge because it's just a link again and it's not loaded for me in a minute.
Okay, let's see. Maybe we'll just let it load in the background and skip to Gorazd and then go back to Gaia.
Yeah, let's try that.
Oh, I pressed the wrong thing. Okay, I'm just quickly checking.
It's strange, like Gorazd.
I was right. Okay, so here we have the Viz by Gorazd, who I think is also online.
Yeah, he's initially loaded a lot quicker for me than the other one, even though it looks more complex. So, but not fully loaded, so it's going to be awkward. So I'm assuming that this is going to be, each one of these is a season. So
yeah, it looks like it. But there are the same greens and oranges twice because this is the Tableau 20 palette, so there's going to be repetition. Yeah,
so let's think, how are we interacting with this? So season 1 at least is called out So you can see where season 1 is because it's called out with that little swish in the middle. So that's good. So we can see in season 1 that trees are used the most because the further out you go, the more regularly that element's used. So that's fine. It's quite intuitive and the tooltips help. So I get it. But again, I'm Mr. Grumpy. I get it, and it's an exercise in learning, but I can't work with it, So there's a bunch of circles. I can see there's a bunch of elements in a bunch of seasons, but I can't see anything which really helps me. So it might be useful to connect the dots. So if I see that snow's used loads in one season, have a line connecting to all the other seasons so I can see where snow was in those seasons, or maybe this is something where you use a bump chart and say, actually, where did snow rank in season 1 versus season 31? It looks good, but it's a bunch of dots.
Yeah, and I find you want people to interact, but when there are 403 dots to interact with, I feel overwhelmed. Like, I can interact with something that stands out. So maybe I hover over a red, big dot at the top. But this is so much work because I don't know how to find the trees. I don't know how to find the interesting things. So I think these kind of charts, they can work to draw my attention and they can work just as a decorative element. But I think they are useless for interaction if you want people to actually find out information, because it's just too much work. It's kind of like, imagine yourself standing in front of 400 different doors and they're like, oh, let's have a look behind each door, and you have to open each one of them and you don't know what you're going to get, if there's going to be anything interesting. So maybe use them just to show how much different stuff there is, that there are things that are more than others, and how many seasons there were. I think those are the things you can show. But if you want me to find out about trees and mountains, make it easier.
Yeah, and I mean, it sounds quite harsh for us to say stuff like this, but if I look at season 1 and try to interrogate or understand what's going on, how am I supposed to do this? So I can see that the sun's used once, the beach is painted once, winter's there in 3 episodes. What am I going to do? Am I going to keep a little manual tally chart beside me to understand how many elements he's used? It doesn't help me, and I think even if I ignore that challenge of interacting with it, underneath we've got this bar chart which everyone's familiar with and is cool, and it's got a nice hover action, so you can hover over trees and see where trees sit in each season. So that's cool, and you can see that it's always near the top because Bob likes trees. But as soon as I hover off the bar chart and try to highlight one of those circles, it deselects. So you almost need it to be a select action so you can at least get that continuity of allowing someone to still manually work through things, but give them some shot at doing something analytical. So it's a bit like an extension of the dendrogram thing where...
Sorry, I just got distracted by Andy.
Right.
It's pretty cool. It is pretty cool. Congratulations. Sorry. Continue.
No, I'm just saying it's a bit like the dendrogram conundrum. So you can have this garnish. What are you going to do with it? It looks attractive, and there's no doubt it looks attractive, but I can't do anything with it. And there isn't a solution to overcome that. So Jeremy had the one with all the dots that were shaped like bars, and he knew that it wasn't great. And so he used a label to overcome that. And it works because he's overcome it. This hasn't overcome the challenge that the way of presenting the data gives you.
So what I want to suggest to Goras, because I have an idea, I don't know if it's going to work, but that's the challenge I'm going to give you. So I think I really like the top bit, like the visual impression it has on me. But like Charlie said, it's really hard to get information out of it. So why not scrap the bar chart at the bottom, as much as it hurts me to say that, and make the bottom section something that gives me an overview of each episode. So, each season. So if I click on any of the blue circles of season 1, it filters based on the season, and it gives me almost like a KPI dashboard of season 1. So it might say featured trees this many times, featured mountains this many times, because then the information that's hidden in the bubbles, and that Charlie said, do you want me to keep a tally? Maybe you could do the tallying for us and say,
Exactly.
what are the elements? What's the percentage maybe? Or is there anything missing that's in others? Or, whatever it is. And bringing that into the bottom, because I think that way you can get people to interact, but they don't necessarily lose interest because they're like, oh, I wonder what the next season is and the next season. And maybe you even let them compare 2 seasons at a time. But I think that's how you could take the interactivity of the really nice looking chart at the top and make it informative.
Yeah.
Okay.
Has Gaia's loaded for you now?
Oh, good question.
So yeah, she's apologised in the chat. It's not your fault the Tableau Public's running like
Exactly, yeah.
rubbish this week.
The reason we do prefer pictures is because, we can then use them if we need to, but also because we use TweetDeck for the favorites, at least I do. And if I have a picture, it makes my life so much easier, because I will not, for the favorites, I will not go to someone's Tableau Public and download a picture to then use and upload to our website or something. So a picture is always better. Okay, I have now got this up, it's a bar chart. Why did it take so long, I wonder?
I don't know, it's totally random, isn't it? It's tall is my first impression. So Bob Ross painting Alaska, and I got that line that divides stuff confuses me a little bit, because I almost think he's called Bob painting
Ross Alaska.
Yeah. It's like some weird, I don't know, folk duo or something. So
yeah. It might need more space in between those words.
Yeah. Did he live in Alaska then, or just like Alaska?
He spent 20 years in Alaska.
Okay.
He was stationed with the Army, I think.
Okay.
Or Air Force, I think, in a place called Fairbanks, and that has impacted clearly his style of painting or what he paints.
Cool. So it is a bar chart. If I hover over stuff, and I don't know if this is because Public's being fun today, I can't actually see any tooltips or anything if I hover over a bar, so I can't see what's what. And it could just be because Public's messing about. But if it's the tooltips are turned off, it would be, oh, you've got it. It's just mine being useless. But I think it's, again, accessibility is a thing, so I shouldn't need to hover to know what a bar is. And
oh, mine doesn't come up. Oh, yeah, now it. Yeah, okay.
So you shouldn't need to hover to know what you're looking at. It might be because of the orientation of this. So because they're vertical bars, the labels would have to be rotated to fit. So if you have to make a decision to rotate stuff 90 degrees so the labels can run across the page, then that's fine. I think it's preferable to always show the label, because like Eva said earlier, imagine that someone's looking at a static image rather than an interactive viz, because it's just easier for your end audience.
So in the tooltip, it should say included and then 126 times in paintings, not included in 126 times paintings. I'm also not, the tooltips don't seem responsive. Mine just is stuck on rivers. Okay, now it changes. And so there's a lot of empty space in the middle, and I don't know why. So also, is he always painting Alaska? I don't know. On the right side, when I hover over, there was something I was hovering over. So I hovered over deciduous, and the tooltip has this bright fluorescent blue font on white background, which is really impossible to read. So I'd consider changing the font color there. But yeah, I don't know what the numbers give me on the right.
Yeah, I think I'd reorientate this. So I'd sort out the Bob Ross painting Alaska thing just so it's a bit more readable. And it's fine. So the section on the right, the paragraph or two up there, is cool because it gives you that context that some earlier stuff lacked. I'd spin the chart round so we can see and reveal the header that shows what the element is. Yeah. And the section with all these big numbers in looks a bit clumsy because I think there's calculations that have been thrown into different sections, so it looks a bit clumsy. And it's something that I always used to do at the start. You think you've got to do everything, calculate everything and make it brilliant. You don't at all. If you know there's 381 paintings, just type it in. Don't have to calculate everything because you get this clunky layout.
And then we have much more control over the formatting of the stuff. So 381 and 31 seasons, that's all not changing.
Yeah.
And what I like to do is when I have the big numbers, because I don't want it next to each other, just have a line break. So if you go down into your, I think it's under label, and then you just make them the way you want them to appear, make the number nice and big, and the font, I prefer the font, like the word, to be the same length as the number, so the number gets nice and big, and then you have it much more compact, and you could scatter those over all that empty space.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we have Filippo Nardi. I'm going to stick with the images for now.
So the career of Bob Ross, statistical point of view. So big summary stuff, how many seasons, how many episodes. And then we've got this combination of stuff. So we've got a like packed bubble. What's the 67 if I hover over this? So I'm trying to understand why we've got a packed bubble. So mine's loaded on public, so I can see how often stuff appears in the packed bubble. Okay, and then there's like this histogram of how many elements did Bob typically have in one of his paintings. So 7, most of his paintings contained 7 elements. And then you had a few with loads, 14, and then somehow 3 with no elements at all. So I don't know why that sounds like one of my paintings.
But I don't understand that, because if it says peaceful reflections, I imagine there's probably a lake. Isn't that an element? And a mountain range, isn't that an element?
Yeah, it sounds a bit strange. So I'd have to check the data to understand that. But it sounds like my artwork with just nothing on it, and I'll try and pass it off as something.
I find this has a lot too much color going on. We've got kind of like a royal blue, dark blue, red, yellow, 5 different shades of grey, 5 different shades of green. We've got a Twitter blue, another yellow, black.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Bold font, normal font. So yeah, I'd reel some of that stuff in. I don't like the packed bubble piece at all. I like the idea of showing this distribution of how many things did Bob include in his paintings. So I'd probably make that the focal point. So I would ditch the packed bubbles because they're never good for anything. And I like the look of the histogram. It's cool. So I would just make it a bit taller. So just make it a taller viz. I'm happy with the width of it. Just be more consistent with font use in terms of color, boldness, stuff like that. The Twitter icon doesn't need to be there. And then I think it's good enough. You could probably lose the idea of using color to encode those bars because you don't need it. The height tells you what's the highest number anywhere. Just strip it right back. And you don't need that annotation to say that 74 episodes had 7 elements, because people could hover, or you just label the top of it and that's good enough.
Agreed. Okay. How many more do we have? 1, 2, 3. Okay. How much time do you have left?
I got loads. I'm good.
Okay. Maybe we can crush them all. And actually, I want to put Denise on the spot. Denise has shown me a picture that she painted after going to a class on how to paint like Bob Ross. And I think it's stunning, and I think she should share that on Twitter.
I think she should as well.
Yeah. So here we go. Devi Priya, elements used in the paintings of Bo. Looks like there's something cut off. So I would fix that first and foremost so that your title displays properly.
Okay, so my public's still just grinding along for me. So at the top, we've got these bars where I'm not quite sure why pink is used for the at least 1 or at least 2 trees, because obviously deciduous and conifer are still trees.
Yeah.
And then if public wasn't being special, we'd be able to interact and see what's going on at the bottom. Because there's just this consistent use of pink, and I'm intrigued to understand if it actually ties to the trees or if it doesn't, because if it doesn't, it probably shouldn't be there.
Yeah, one thing I don't understand is why the use of pink when it's about trees or nature, because pink doesn't really feature in nature at all, except maybe for flamingos.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? 'Cause, like, we've always got these choices to make about color, and sometimes people are very intentional about steering away from like gender stereotypes or from political things. But for this, it totally makes sense to tie into nature. So browns and blues and greens. So yeah, pink is a bit of an unusual choice. I mean, it definitely catches the eye, but it doesn't really fit the topic.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's that I can't get public to work on this one at all. So it's
So one thing I don't understand is the bottom. It says seasons and episodes, and what I understand is that there were sometimes guests, so he didn't paint all of the pictures across the 403 episodes. He painted 380 something pictures, I think. So
Right.
on the right side it says number of occurrences, but I think that's just the number of episodes, isn't it, in each season?
Yeah, it looks like it because where you've got gaps,
So then
it's
what's the
down where there
value
aren't
in that?
gaps.
Or should it be the number of paintings, maybe?
I assume that when you change the parameter to pick the thing out, it shows you how many episodes that element's appeared in that season.
Okay. I see.
But then the point about pink remains, because if I can choose something that's not tree, then I don't expect it to come through as pink.
Yeah.
So I think it's probably quite good biz, but I can't really explore it, which is a bit annoying.
Yeah. Okay. We'll move on to Hayley Kim. And this one, all I can see is this image of his head. There is data, and it is in front of the picture, but it's just, I don't even notice it. Because the data, like the rows are really tiny, there's little dots, but the orange of the picture is so prominent. And then it says episode in which each element was contained in the same orange as his head. So what does that have to do with anything?
Yeah, it's tricky. It's like a strip plot, isn't it? So the lighter grey is where the elements appeared fewer than 100 times. The dark grey is where it's appeared more than 100 times. But so it's a nice idea, I guess, but it kind of looks like your printer's running out of ink. And it's a similar challenge to Goraz's earlier, where it's just hard to see, isn't it? There's so much going on that I can't comprehend it, and because there's no summary of it, it's just really, really difficult for me to get any value from it. So I can see, yeah, for sure, I can see that there's a fairly complete line for trees, so I can deduce that Bob likes his trees and he doesn't really like dots. There's not many dots, but because there's so many rows, I can't necessarily tell the difference between a fire and fog, or close together things. So I think there's a few ways to simplify this, or just reel it in, because it's really quite difficult to see.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then we have Alice, and hers I found intriguing. I can't use the interactive version, I'm afraid, but I hadn't thought of doing a bump chart with this data.
Yeah, I thought, because I think I said this for Goraz, it would be an interesting idea to see how that, like snow, would permeate through all the different seasons, and I like it. So Publix worked for me on this one randomly, even though it looks quite complicated. So God knows what affects things. And it's great. So you can click any dot and it highlights the whole season 1 to season 31 pattern for that particular element. And layout wise, I think it's really, really simple to see. So you can see the season along the bottom, the ranks called out at both the left and right hand side. So if you get more than halfway through, you don't have to refer back to the left, you can look to the right. So I think it works really well. It's got all the usual downsides of a bump chart, in that you don't get any real sense of how many more times a single tree is used than two trees, but that kind of doesn't matter if you just consider that it's ranking. So it's good, and I think it definitely needed to be limited to being 20 elements rather than the total, because otherwise it would have been tricky. But I like it.
I like it too, but what I find hard is I don't know what elements are. Like, let's say I look at this for the first time. What is an element, and why should I bother? Like, I think this needs a mention of elements include trees, mountains, something, and maybe some of the start lines, at least for the ones that continue, that don't just have a single point, it could be labeled with what they are. So the first one here is mountain, and then we have trees, and we have tree probably at the very top. But for me, it's like, it's a lot of lines, but I don't know what any of them stand for, because all I know is the rank. But I'm not so interested. I'm more interested in the actual name of the element.
Yep. We've only got 2 left. We're on fire. We're good.
And Kevin, so it was inspired by Kevin Flerledge, and I think when I looked at the picture, so the pipe I think needs another space maybe, because it looks almost a bit like Flerledge, because it looks like an eye behind it. Okay,
yeah.
Let's very quickly go Sergio.
So this is great because it absolutely resonates with stuff we've talked about so far. So what is the dendrogram doing in this viz? It's just leading us to the data. So it serves no purpose other than to be garnish. And it does look good, that's fine, but it's also a distraction, because if all of that liney stuff isn't there, then what am I actually interested in? I'm interested in knowing what the element is. That's the label. Don't need the dendrogram for that. And I'm interested in knowing the length of the bar. Don't need the dendrogram for that. So it serves no purpose other than to look nice. But ultimately, when you want to take the data away from the viz, you ignore the dendrogram.
Yeah, agreed.
So this is why, I can't remember the name, it was Vivianti who said, I want to know how to do this. Do it, practice it, and then see how many times you do it again, and see how many times clients or members of your family or friends want to see your dendrograms, because it isn't going to be often.
Yes, I agree. And it's what I like about the dendrogram, and surely that can be achieved in other ways, is this underlining effect of each label.
Yeah.
That's about it. Basically, you can cut off all the curvy bits.
Yeah, because it almost implies there's a relationship between these things which isn't there, because they all converge on the same point. But a tree is not the same as waves, and it's not the same as a dock or a cactus. So it just doesn't make any sense.
Yes. And then last but not least, we have Alyssa Prem. And we have a packed bubble with, I'm guessing, all the elements. But she has included little icons. So there's tree, there's trees, there's deciduous, coniferous, yeah. Then we have grass, maybe bush, clouds, mountain,
lake
with trees on the side, lakes with trees inside. Oh no, that's a river. Okay,
lake and a river.
Maybe not super clear given how specific the elements are labeled, but it's probably sufficient. I wish I could interact.
Yeah, it works in the sense that so in terms of layout, it's fine. I don't like swirly fonts like that. I just think they look a bit she's got far more skill than me in terms of using the background image, and the layout's all very pretty and nice and looks professional. I like it. It doesn't for me overcome the fact that as an exercise in understanding how often is a tree being used or how often is a lake being painted, it doesn't answer the question. So it uses parameters nicely, it highlights things nicely. Pack bubbles just don't work for me, and I'm fairly sure they don't work for anyone. So I think there's obviously a lot of work's gone into getting all of these elements right, and I think that Alyssa's definitely got some skill, and I think if she can convert that into articulating the story a bit more clearly, I think she'll come in and leaps and bounds. So
yeah,
definitely got design skills, but just think about how you're conveying that information.
Definitely. And to close out, I do want to bring up my notifications. This is what Denise painted. Isn't it amazing?
I can't wait for YouTube to catch up. Actually, I'll look on Twitter while I wait.
So it's on the shared screen as well. Oh yeah, you can't see that. YouTube is like 30 seconds behind of when we're talking.
What's the story behind this? When did Denise do this?
So she went to a class where you learn to paint like Bob Ross.
Really?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, I know. I can't even draw stick figures.
God, no, I can't either. I can't draw a line. So, God, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
Well done, Denise.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so let me bring us back on the screen. So, wow, 5:30 on the dot. 90 minutes of us talking. Well done, everyone, for sticking it out.
Yeah, but it makes up for us not being around for the rest of the year because where are we? 16th, 17th, something like that?
It's the 16th today.
Okay, so it's almost the end of the year, so...
It is, and I think everyone can take a bit of a break from all of this stuff. I mean, hopefully people will continue for the next 2 weeks to do Makeover Monday, and I hope it's on their New Year's resolution to do every week in 2021.
Yeah, and I think we want everyone to submit 2 or 3 times for the remainder of the year to see if we can hit that 10,000 number.
Yes, people. We do hope to reach 10,000 visits for this year. So if you haven't, make sure that all of your visits are submitted. Maybe actually let me bring up the tracker. So if you go to makeovermonday.co.uk, our website, and then you go to participate, submit. Make sure that every week you put your submission through this. If you are not sure if you've submitted, don't worry, just do it again because we filter out the duplicates. But if you go to the submissions tracker, you actually can check. You can filter for your name and see how many weeks you've completed. And I guess the goal for everyone should be to be in the 100% club. Is that fair?
Oh, yeah. As a minimum. And you've always got the opportunity because everyone's probably got a bit of time off for Christmas. And if you look back 50 weeks of what you did at the start of the year and think, I could have done that better, just do another one, resubmit it. It might break the tracker, but hopefully it'll add up and then we'll hit 10,000 and everyone will be happy.
Yeah, absolutely. Or if you've missed some weeks, please do. Now, this is obviously on this computer. The last time I checked was in week 46, and it's now loading because it's on Tableau Public. It will pop up eventually. But yeah, if you submit there, that will be of great help. I think we're at 9,000 something, 100 something. And I'm just quickly checking if there's anything in the comments. So again, tomorrow, okay, while this is loading, let me bring it up. YouTube, Andy Kriebel, the channel where you are. I hope you've all subscribed. Hit the like button as well if you enjoyed today's show. And tomorrow, upcoming live streams on Andy's channel. What's coming for Makeover Monday 2021? So tune in so that we can share all our updates. Oh my god. Okay, Tableau Public is just not playing nicely. So anyway, make sure to join us tomorrow. And yeah, I guess that's the last Visit Review for 2020. Oh my god.
Yeah, it's been fun. So yeah, everyone, like Eve says, tune in tomorrow and have a nice evening, rest of day or morning, possibly, wherever you are.
Okay, and thank you for joining me once again, Charlie.
That's all right, no problem.
And I'm sure we'll speak soon.
Cool, all right.